Hi, my name is Jordan Xavier. Oh, hold sorry. Hi, my name is Jordan Xavier, and we are doing our project on the author Tim O'Brien. I worked with Rebecca Rosales and Osiris Gutierrez Gonzalez on this project, and my specific section is on his early life, after the war, and his works. So we'll start out with his early life. He was born in Austin, Minnesota in 1946. He then moves, he stays within Minnesota, but he moves to Worthington, Minnesota, just a little jump over. And he moves when he's 10 years old. He doesn't feel very positively about this town. He actually has a quote in an interview where that I'll read to you. He says, Worthington, Minnesota is a town that congratulates itself day after day on its own ignorance of the world, a town that got us into Vietnam. The people in the town sent me to that war, couldn't spell the word Hanoi if you spotted them three vowels. So he obviously feels very strongly that they were a backward town that believed we should have been in that war when he very strongly believes that we shouldn't have been. So his father was an insurance salesman and his mother was an elementary school teacher. They both were involved in the Vietnam, I'm sorry, they were both involved in World War II. His father served in the Pacific and his mother served in a division of the Navy called Women Accepted for Voluntary Emergency Service. Both of his parents believed in World War II and believed in the cause for it when they were involved in it. But when Tim O'Brien gets drafted, you'll see that he does not believe in the cause. So he wanted to fight in a war that he believed in, but he did not want to fight in this specific war. He didn't want to fight in Vietnam. But the fact that his parents believed in the World War II, it must have pressured him to feeling like he needed to go when he got drafted. So he always wanted to be a writer, but he didn't really feel like he needed to be a writer. It was just something that he liked doing ever since he was young. He graduates Macalester College in 1968. He then that same year gets drafted to go to the Vietnam War. He does not want to go at all. He actually goes up during training for the war. He goes up towards Canada, but so that he can skip the draft and not go. But he gets too afraid, and he actually is more afraid of being a coward and being ridiculed than he is of actually going to Vietnam. So that shows the amount of pressure that there is to serve in a war that you don't believe in. So he eventually does go to war, and this is a photo of him in Vietnam. So Rebecca actually touched a lot on the Vietnam War, but I wanted to just talk a little bit about its effect on Tim O'Brien directly. So his training did not prepare him for the kind of guerrilla warfare that Vietnam proved to be and to have a lot of. In an interview, he talks about how one time he did see an enemy soldier on a night ambush and he fired at the group of three Viet Cong, and he still carries the burden around that he may have killed one of them. And he continues to wrestle with his doubts about the war in the early days of service. And he feels a lot of guilt about the things that happened in the war. The war made him a certain kind of writer. All his books are about an individual's struggle to do the right thing. And that all came out from his experiences in the war. This quote I know Osiris talks about, so I won't get too much into it, but I thought it was really important. And I feel like it shows a lot of what it proves his negative experiences in the war because he talks about in this quote the fact that if you're hearing a story about war where there's one good guy and one bad guy, then the story isn't true because war is a horrible thing where there's no winners. And uh, you feel free to pause and read the quote, but I know that Osiris will talk about it too. So he does go to the war. Here's another photo of him in Vietnam. And then after the war, he goes to Harvard with a scholarship, but he does not finish. He drops out and works for Washington Post magazine. And here's a quote from him about how he felt about dropping out of school. There came a point when I had to decide where I was going to devote my time, and I decided that I wanted to be a writer and not a scholar, and I'm glad that I didn't pursue it. So he seems like he's happy with his choice to have not been someone who graduated. He just wanted to write. So we'll start with his first work. While he was working for the Washington Post in 1973, he published If I Die in a Combat Zone, Box Me Up and Ship Me Home. To describe this book, I have one of the praises from inside the book, and I'll just read it quickly. O'Brien brilliantly and quietly evokes the foot soldier's daily life in the paddies and foxholes, evokes a blind, blundering war. Tim O'Brien writes with care and eloquence of someone for whom communication is still a vital possibility. It is a beautiful, painful book arousing pity and fear for the daily realities of a modern disaster by Annie Gottlieb of the New York Times book. I'm just gonna have a sip of water. um, So he has a lot of most of his books are war books. So here's three books about the Vietnam War. One is Going After Casiado, and this won the National Book Award in fiction. Another war book was In the Lake of the Woods. This won the James Fenimore Cooper Prize from the Society of American Historians and was named the best novel of the year by Time magazine. Um, the nuclear age was not about the Vietnam War, but it was about the Cold War and all the fear that it evoked during that time period. So it is still under the realm of war story. And then we have our last Vietnam War story, which is Things They Carried, which is the book or the chapter of the book that we read in class. This book this book won France's prestigious Prix des Molières Livres Étrangers Award, the National Magazine Award, the Best American Short Story of the Century, edited by John Updike. So The Things They Carried is a collection of stories about the men in an infantry platoon in Vietnam. It was narrated by Tim O'Brien, but this is a work of fiction. This is not true stories. They are based on experiences, but he felt like the stories that he wrote evoked the feelings that he wanted to invoke more than the true stories would. So in a way, these stories were more true than some of the real stories because it made you feel the feeling that he felt when he was in the war. So some quotes that he has about his own book, I won't read through all of them, but basically all these quotes are just talking about how he wanted to make this book feel authentic, and how it wasn't his own writing. I mean, it wasn't his own experiences. It was works of fiction. And the last quote is about the moral function of this book, which isn't necessarily to put yourself in someone else's shoes, but it's to put yourself into someone else's moral framework, which I thought was really interesting. And he does have some books not about war. There's Northern Lights, which is about a 30th reunion of college classmates, Tomcat in Love, which is about a womanizing professor, and July, July, which is about two brothers confronting their personal demons. One of the brothers actually is a Vietnam War vet. So all of his books have a slight slant towards that. Oh, there we go. Some more awards. Sorry. So he won the award for American Academy of Arts and Letters, the Guggenheim Foundation, National Endowment for the Arts, elected to Society of American Historians, American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and he was published in, I'll go through this quickly, The New Yorker, Esquire, Harper's, The Atlantic, Playboy, Plowshares, The American Short Stories, and the O. Henry Price Stories. So Tim O'Brien today. Tim O'Brien is married. He has a wife named Meredith Baker. He is a father to two children. He actually didn't have his two kids till he was in his late 50s. Sorry, my throat is really dry. He was scared that being a father would take away from his writing. So he waited a really long time to have them. But now that he has kids, he actually says that he would give up writing for more time with them. So he loves being a dad. He did take a break from writing so that he could focus on his kids, but he is writing again, and he actually has a book about his kids. He continues to write. The book is called Dad's Maybe Book, and it's just about his experiences and some letters to his kids. He is now 77 years old and a father and still a writer. And then next we'll go into his um, impact on today's society and culture and writing, and that will be Osiris's project. Thank you very much.